Kieran Gilbert live in Canberra, thank you for that. And we are now taking you back live to Canberra to Barnaby Joyce. He is speaking right now. Let's take you there.
Congratulations for your new appointment. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to join you today for the National Farmers Federation Congress of 2014 and to represent the Prime Minister Tony Abbott. The Prime Minister has asked me to extend his apologies for not joining you this morning, but he has a very important job, as just been mentioned, of representing our nation at the inauguration of the new President of Indonesia, President Joko Widodo. And last week, at another event, the Prime Minister referred to 5 industries where Australia was internationally competitive and where we needed, as a nation, to concentrate our efforts. It was no coincidence that food and agribusiness has re-emerged in the nation's psyche, and that agriculture is one of the top 5 pillars of the Australian economy. Agriculture, for a variety of serendipitous reasons, has re-emerged in public policy thinking and is now recognised as a fundamental plank of our economy. All of us here today know that we have a great potential in agriculture if we can continue to build on the foundations of the past and get the policy settings right for the future. The land is inherently a noble and good occupation. Your endeavours feed and clothe people. You're on the land if you farm. You're on the land if you work in an abattoir. You're on the land if you're in the logistics business and transporting produce around our nation. You're on the land if you're a vet. And most especially, you're on the land if you're a family farm. Mum and dad, and the kitchen table, and all those things that are pertinent and are part of the iconography that we clearly relate to the land. Why is it good for a family to own their own house on their own street? It's much cheaper, if you wish to just stack them in units. Why is it good to tend to the elderly? Why is it good to do so many things that inherently mightn't make pure economic sense, but we know are emblematic of who we are as a nation? Why is it good to have the Australian people as the primary and overwhelming owner of the primary asset? Because that is what makes us a nation. And that is why I left accountancy and on 2 occasions put everything at risk, basically giving up the first job as an accountant and the second job as a senator, so that we could get ourselves into a position to do this job. As I noted in my second maiden speech, and it's great when you can be a maiden twice, my second maiden speech, that the notion of nobility in the pursuit of agriculture is not new to us. Cicero said, about 100 years before Christ, that of all the occupations by which gain is secured, none is better than agriculture, none more profitable, none more delightful, none more becoming of free men. Now, there's one thing there that we might argue about now, and that is whether it's more profitable, and there'll be certainly a range of arguments about how delightful it still is. How I would see it is that a people that bind together around intangible principles but emphatic as to who they are is deeper and wider than a group who hold to quantifiable tangibles that are guided merely by pecuniary value. When the pressure descends on a nation, the call is made to those who love this land. And what value do you put on love? Now that the government owes well in excess of $350 billion and mining is slipping, it is not just farming families that need this trend reversed. What New Zealand has done is of some guidance to how our future should be and how the farming sector can and must work together with other parties. So where do our opportunities and impediments lie? And do we have the comprehension to realise what we need to do and the commitment at all levels to do it? These are the questions that I hope the Green Paper starts the process of answering. This is a Green Paper that has been through Cabinet. This is a Green Paper that is part of the process that you should now become part of as well, and further in our capacity to try and narrow this down to a white paper which is policy. Do we think that a nation built on the deliberate actions of Lachlan Macquarie, of John Curtin, of Ben Chifley, of Robert Menzies, of John McEwen will now live on and thrive by some miraculous accident of random purposes, a national experiment of chaos theory? Unfortunately, I believe this is where the previous government left agriculture. The land has so often been the home of the soldier, farmer, statesman, whose formative experience is a vessel from which guidance through the time of challenge is rooted. Noted historical figures such as the Roman statesman Lucius Quintus Cincinnatus and the first American president George Washington had their characters so indelibly etched in the land they came from that they preferred to go back to that land later on than to become a king. And this quality of being part of the land rather than the head for a crown has carried so many people's admiration of these people through the years. Lachlan Macquarie, apart from his acceptance of 300 merino rams from John MacArthur while the 5th Governor of New South Wales, left as his greatest achievement our future agricultural purpose, the construction of the first road across the range and the establishment of the city of Bathurst. This is a metaphor of how we saw the nation. The nation had to grow its agricultural capacity. But it's not just those historical figures, it's some more recent figures that also have what they are and what they've done for the nation grounded in their experience in the land. In commerce, as we know, Kerry Packer had consolidated pastoral holdings. Rupert Murdoch's family came from the land, Gina Reinhardt's family came from the land, and they all had this formative experience as part of their DNA. Whilst in China, I had dinner just recently with what was at that time, literally that time, the richest man in China before Jackie Ma sold Alibaba. His name was Zhong Qinghu. He was the chairman of the Wahaha Group. And where did he come from? Where was the vessel which he grew from? It was from the land. Whilst over there, I was also with Twiggy Forrest, and he was through ASA 100. We set up with Liu Zhong Hao, chairman of the New Hope Group, another mechanism for another channel of our produce overseas. Now, both these individuals also came from the land. So it is the human experience from and the product grown on the land that are essential for the growth and sustenance of our nation. Combined with this, the purpose of any nation is defined by the benefaction of ownership, being inextricably linked to the people who live there. For this reason, farming families are the cornerstone of not only the rural community, but also the litmus test of our political system. The Agricultural Competitiveness White Paper that this current government has carriage of is seminal to who we are, where we came from, and is a vital part of the puzzle of how we get out of our current financial bind. This puzzle piece relies on expanding the profitability of agricultural output by Australian farming families. We have a choice here. We can either tone down all ideas to politically correct, economically neutered, nationally agnostic terms, and then we'll have the perfect serum for an inoffensive and useless motherhood statement, a frosted windscreen to guide us on a foggy road. Or we can be definitive in where we need to go next and set down a real plan of how we get there. So to go from the esoteric to the more mundane, what is the price we offer those who tend the land? In today's value, a 450 kilogram beast was worth about 350 cents a kilogram in 1970. That's over $1,500 a head. Now, if you sent 200 of those $1,500 a head cattle to the sale now, you'd be able to buy a reasonable house in a reasonable regional town. But we know that it is not possible in those terms of trade to see that now. Other people do steers to Land Cruisers, or bales of wool to what is required to pay the school fees. And for the purpose of this speech, let me state that the aspiration for a better price in cattle is merely the metaphor for a better price in all agricultural products. But for the purpose of brevity, I won't mention every agricultural product, for otherwise I will merely be standing here reading a rather long list. We are inquiring of processes in the Senate as to what is a fair price. A farmer that gets between 10 and 15% of the final price when they've done the majority of the work is inherently unfair. There is still a lot of money in agriculture today. It's just that different people get it. The farmer gets far less, and to be honest, so does the taxation department. In Asia, we have in excess of 4 billion people, and they are making their way by the hundreds of millions to the middle class. We have China that still holds a variant form of the one-child policy. And what does all this mean for agriculture? Well, it means that if you have one child, and that child is your future social security policy, then you're going to be exceptionally careful as to what that child eats. If you live in a country where the density of population inherently engenders a hierarchical system that proclaims itself in a myriad of ways, including what you wear and what you eat, then quality counts in how you are placed in that hierarchy. If we were to produce food, and just food, then we must remember that India is a net food exporter and China has 4 times the number of cattle that we do. The political ramifications threatening the livelihoods of hundreds of millions of farmers by saying we are going to be the food bowl of Asia is untenable for these respective countries and is impossible for us to do, as we only produce about 1% of total global agricultural product. So we need to produce a premium product for a premium price, and that premium must flow back through the farm gate if we are to get a reinvestment in our farmland by entities most likely to give us the best tax return to the Treasury and insist in our paying our bills in other sections of government. The greater the reach we have down the production chain, the greater the prospective return. The beast that is sold lightweight returns less than the beast that is finished off on grain. Further return is there if you can process the beast into particular cuts of meat. And the world is your oyster if you can effectively retail it. It is the reality that few individual landholders can secure the capital required to do this, so cooperatives are a great mechanism of combining the capital to access the benefits of reaching down this production chain. It is little wonder that our 2 biggest rural-owned organisations are CBH and Murray Goulburn, both cooperatives. Government lives more on the cost side of enterprises, in both creating costs through such things as water pricing and through and other parts of state legislation, especially such as tree clearing regulations. And building the costs and building the capital for external costs is also extremely important, especially those of rail and road. Canada's rail freight...
That was the Agriculture Minister, Barnaby Joyce, addressing the National